At the will reading, Grandpa's lawyer gave me a $38 million check. My parents ripped it from my hands and burned it. I didn't stop them, I just smiled. It had been years since I last stepped foot into that law office, the same one where Grandpa Merrick used to bring me as a child, letting me sit in the corner while he reviewed contracts or signed checks with the kind of ease that came from building an empire. I hadn't returned since his health started to fade, not even when my parents insisted I visit, but he made me promise, and I keep my promises. That's the only reason I was there. Before we get into the sweet part, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. If you're watching us for the first time, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss any new story. The conference room hadn't changed. It still smelled like lemon polish and old paper wood-paneled. Walls soaked in decades of secrets and decisions that had shaped our family's legacy. I ran my hand along the back of the leather chair, grounding myself. This wasn't just a reading of a will. This was the final echo of a man who had always seen me, even when no one else did. My mother sat stiffly, her pearl necklace perfectly aligned, each bead a symbol of her obsession with appearances. She didn't say a word, but her sharp eyes kept darting my way. My father had his arms crossed tight across his chest like a soldier preparing for battle. And then there was Kelly, my cousin, and their golden child. Her blouse was crisp, her makeup flawless, her smirk polished. She looked like someone who already knew she had one. Mr. Halpern, Grandpa's lawyer for over 30 years, entered the room carrying a large leather folder. He was older now, with deeper lines etched around his mouth and a slight tremble in his hands. But his voice was as steady as ever. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "We are gathered today to honor the final wishes of Merrick Wynne." His eyes found mine briefly before returning to the folder. Then he began reading aloud. "To Kalia Wynne," he said, "I leave the Jackson Hole cabin and the 1959 vintage Gibson guitar." Kalia's smile faltered for a moment. Just a flicker, but I noticed. She had expected more to Everett and Lizette Wynne, he continued. "I bequeath the heirloom grandfather clock, a selection of vinyl records, and a $10,000 charitable donation made in their names." A sharp noise escaped my mother's throat. "That must be an error," she said, her tone laced with disbelief. Mr. Halpern didn't even flinch. He turned the page slowly, then looked up again. "To Seraphina Wynne, my granddaughter and my confidant," he said, "I leave the entirety of my financial estate totaling $38,246,000. Silence. You could have heard a pin drop. My father's face turned a deep shade of red. Kalia's jaw went rigid. My mother stood up abruptly, her voice rising. "She doesn't deserve that." She turned her back on this family. "The will," Mr. Halpern said firmly, "was signed, notarized, and filed by Mr. Merrick Wynne personally. 3 months prior to his passing. Everything is legal and binding." But no one was listening. My father surged forward, yanking the check from Mr. Halpern's hand before I could even touch it. He held it in the air, waving it like an accusation. You think this buys your way back into the family." Then he struck a match. I watched as the flame consumed the edge of the paper, curling it into ash. The numbers and signature blackened and disappeared in seconds. My mother lunged for the envelope I had held. She tore it apart with shaking hands, shredding the paper into a dozen pieces. "Grandpa's handwriting gone. This is what happens," she spat. "When you betray your blood." I didn't move. I didn't beg, didn't argue, didn't even blink. I just smiled. Not the kind of smile that speaks joy. No, this one was calm, unshaken. The kind of smile you wear when you know something they don't because they hadn't destroyed what they thought. They had. They didn't see the second envelope. It was still tucked safely inside my coat pocket, right where Grandpa told me to keep it. The tension in the room hadn't broken even after the check had turned to ash. Kalia kept glancing between my parents and Mr. Halpern, as if hoping someone would say it was all a big mistake. My father was still breathing heavily, his fists clenched. My mother sat back down, face pale, lips trembling but locked. Mr. Halpern gently closed the folder and slid it back into his briefcase. "Unless there are any further questions," he said, "this concludes the will reading." He stood, offering a respectful nod toward me. I returned it without a word. Outside, the sun had dipped below the skyline, casting the streets in amber and shadow. I wrapped my coat tighter around me, the weight of the hidden envelope pressing lightly against my ribs. My heels clicked softly against the pavement as I walked away from the office and the family that had tried to cut me out one final time. I didn't look back. When I reached my apartment, the first thing I did was set the coat over the chair. My hands shook slightly. As I pulled the envelope free, Grandpa had given it to me the last time we had lunch at our favorite diner. He had placed it in my hands, wrapped in a cloth napkin, his expression unreadable. "Don't open it," he had said, "unless they burn it." I broke the seal. Inside was a check identical to the one they destroyed. Same amount. Same details. But this one had something extra. A red stamp, reading non-negotiable copy, taped to the back, was a small USB drive and a handwritten note. Let them burn it, then open the real file. That was Grandpa, always a step ahead. I turned on my laptop, slipped in the USB, and waited. One folder appeared, Inheritance. I clicked it open. Inside was a scanned trust transfer form. Signed, stamped, verified, the funds were real. The transfer had already taken place, weeks ago. The destroyed check, a decoy, a test. One, they failed spectacularly. My smile widened. This wasn't about revenge. This was about truth, about legacy, about being seen. And for the first time in a long while, I felt seen. Grandpa hadn't just left me money. He had left me a message they had tried to destroy. But I was still here, and this was only the beginning. I was 19 when I made the decision that would sever my family's trust in me for good. Grandpa called it bravery. My parents called it betrayal. They wanted me to follow the traditional path, business school, a corporate internship, then into the family company, preferably under my father's watchful eye, but I had other dreams. I wanted to study design, to create, to tell stories through color and texture and shape. When I declined the full-ride scholarship to my father's alma mater and instead enrolled in a small liberal arts college upstate, it was like I had detonated a bomb in our living room. My father's face had gone redder than I'd ever seen it, and my mother, she didn't even argue. She simply walked out of the room, her silence louder than his yelling. 3 weeks later, I came home for Thanksgiving. It was supposed to be a short visit, just a weekend. But when I opened the door to my childhood bedroom, it wasn't mine anymore. The walls were repainted, a cold gray. My desk, my bed, my bookshelf all gone. Even the notes Grandpa used to tuck inside my favorite books were missing. In their place, 2 armchairs, a faux orchid, and a lighthouse print I'd never seen before. The nameplate on the door now read, Guest Room Ikalia, passed me in the hallway, sipping tea like nothing was wrong. Don't be so dramatic, she said, not even slowing her pace. It's not like you were using it. The shift happened. Gradually after that, missed birthday cards, calls that went unanswered, and then one day the monthly rent support my parents had been sending just stopped when I called to ask. My mother sighed. Actions have consequences, Sarah, she said, her voice cool. You wanted independence, now you have it. I was going to lose my apartment, until Grandpa stepped in. He wired the exact amount. I needed no questions, no lectures. Just a note, you can do this. I believe in you. After that, the help continued, but always modest, never flashy, enough to survive, to stay in school, and always accompanied by a letter. His handwriting, but elegant, became a lifeline. He never told me to come home. He never told me to give in. But each line spoke of love, of belief, of a quiet pride that stitched me back together every time. I felt like unraveling. The last letter came 3 weeks before he passed. Just a few lines. Survival isn't weakness. It's proof of strength. Keep going, Serafina. I carried that note everywhere. Through rejection letters, through silent holidays spent alone, through part-time jobs and aching doubt. I carried it into that law office, and I carried it now, as I opened the drawer in my kitchen where I kept every letter he had ever sent. Laying them out one by one, I realized he had been building something all along. Not just support, not just encouragement. A foundation. One they couldn't take from me. The day after the will reading, I woke up feeling off. Not angry, not afraid, just hollow. Like I'd stepped out of my life and was watching it from far away. I brewed my coffee in silence and stared out my apartment window, watching the early morning lights stretch across the buildings. The envelope Grandpa had given me, the real one, was still sitting on my table, along with the USB. I hadn't touched them since confirming the trust was already transferred. I'd proven the inheritance was safe, but something still gnawed at me. I opened my banking app, just to be sure. Error, account not found. I blinked, tried again, slower this time. Same result, maybe a system glitch. I grabbed a second card and tried to make a small online payment, declined. Something was wrong. I called the bank. The hold music seemed to go on forever before a man finally answered. I'm sorry, Miss Wynn, he said, tapping at a keyboard. Your account has been marked inactive. What? I asked, my voice tightening. There must be some mistake. He paused. It's marked as deceased. I froze. Excuse me? It says the account holder, Serafina Lisette, is legally deceased. Certified by the registrar's office. The change was processed. 2 weeks ago, I ended the call before my voice could crack. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone with numb fingers. Like someone had turned off the world's volume. I felt everything and nothing all at once. I called the DMV next. My license wouldn't pull up. Then the health insurance portal error. Then my school alumni login blocked with each screen. Each account not found message. It became clearer. I wasn't just disinherited, I was being erased, and someone was doing it on purpose. I went for a walk to clear my head. Cold air bit at my cheeks, but it helped me focus. As I passed a line of bare trees along the sidewalk, I noticed a woman. Standing across the street, she wore a pale blue scarf and oversized sunglasses that hid most of her face. The scarf caught my attention. It was identical to one my mother used to own, the same one she said the dry cleaners had lost 3 years ago. The woman didn't smile. She didn't wave. She just watched me. I turned down a side street, moving faster now. When I glanced back, she was gone. When I returned home, I didn't hesitate. I opened my laptop and plugged in Grandpa's USB again. I hadn't clicked the second folder before. It was labeled Inheritance Backup. Inside was a single Documenta scanned PDF of a trust transfer form. Signed, witnessed, filed, the same form from before, but with more details. The account number at the bottom caught my attention. The last 4 digits were Grandpa's birthday reversed. I used to recite it as a kid when I'd help him sort papers in his study. This wasn't just a decoy, it was the real deal. He had made the transfer weeks before his death, before the will reading, before my parents had the chance to interfere. Then I noticed something else. Taped to the back of the non-negotiable check from the envelope was a second USB drive, smaller than the first. I hadn't even noticed it earlier. I inserted it into the port. There was only one file. A video. Grandpa's face filled the screen. He looked older than I remembered, frailer. The light in the sunroom catching every wrinkle on his face, but his eyes were sharp. "If you're seeing this, Serafina," he began, "then they did what I feared they would." He spoke slowly, each word measured and careful. "They tried to erase you." He paused, letting the weight of that truth sink in. "You were always the quiet one. The one who saw more than she let on. The one who felt everything and asked for nothing." A faint smile touched his lips. "That's why they feared you. That's why I trusted you." The screen went black. I sat back in my chair, my heart pounding. All this time he had been preparing for this moment. He knew what they were capable of. He knew they would retaliate, and he had left me everything I needed. There was one more item Grandpa had left me on my 18th birthday. A small brass key, wrapped in an old handkerchief. He had said only, "You'll need this someday when you're ready to claim yourself." That day had come. I searched the cloth drawer in my nightstand and found it still tucked inside the handkerchief, untouched. Using the information from the USB, I found a business card tucked inside one of Grandpa's old letters. Langford Private Vaults. It was a storage facility, one that specialized in confidential safekeeping for high-profile estates. The address was on the edge of the historic district, nestled between a boutique wine shop and a dusty bookstore. I'd walked past it a dozen times without realizing what it was. I made an appointment for the next morning. Langford was unmarked. No flashy signs or digital buzzers, just a bronze plaque by the door. Inside, the air was cool and quiet. The receptionist, an older woman with wire-rimmed glasses, barely looked at me before saying, "Box number." I handed her the brass key. Her eyes widened slightly. She typed something on her screen, then nodded. "Right this way." She led me down a narrow corridor lined with reinforced steel doors. The further we walked, the colder it got. Finally, she stopped at a door marked Box 17. She unlocked it, slid open a metal drawer, and stepped aside. Inside was a sleek black, fireproof folder. I waited until the door closed behind her. Then I opened it. The first item, a certified cashier's check for $38 million. Real, bank seal embedded, addressed to me. The second, notarized land deeds for the Wynn family estate. The third, stock certificates for Wynn Carroll Holdings, every voting share. Every right, signed over to me. My name was written in crisp ink at the bottom of each document. There was also a velvet pouch. Inside, a gold-etched flash drive and a folded piece of thick stationery with Grandpa's writing. "Let them burn the decoy, but never let them burn you." That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the folder open in front of me. Letters fanned out like armor, the weight of each one reminding me of who I was. They had tried to erase me, but Grandpa had left me the truth, and with it, the power to reclaim everything. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about restoration. It was about reminding the man myself that I had never needed their approval. I had always been enough. And now, I had the proof to back it up. The next morning I stood outside the courthouse, not because I had business there. Not yet, but because I needed to feel something solid under my feet. Marble steps, heavy doors, the smell of old paper and polished wood. It reminded me of places where truths are decided, written, recorded. It reminded me that despite what the world said, I was still here. I pulled out my phone and tried to log into my personal banking again. Still locked. Then I checked the health portal. Error. School login. Deactivated. I felt like a ghost. A breathing, thinking ghost. It hit me again. I was legally dead. What was supposed to be symbolic disinheritance had been turned into a full-blown, bureaucratic disappearance. I wasn't just cut off. I was erased from systems that run the world. Birth records, insurance, academic history, gone. I called the county registrar's office. The woman on the phone confirmed it. Yes, there's a death certificate for Serafina Lisette Wynn filed on February 3rd. Cause of death listed as accidental. I hung up before she could say anything else. Then I sat in silence in the middle of my kitchen for a long time. It was one thing for my parents to disapprove of me. It was another to bury me. But someone had done exactly that, filed false paperwork. Forged signatures, scrubbed me from the record. They wanted to make sure I couldn't come back. And yet, I was still here and I had proof it was time to use it. That evening, as I reviewed the trust documents again, a small white envelope slipped out from one of the folders. Noticed it before. It was blank on the outside, no return address, no markings. Inside was a single line typed in bold block letters. They didn't burn the real check. Look in box array at Langford Security. I stared at it for a full minute, trying to piece it together. Box array? That wasn't where I had just been. My box had been number 17. I pulled out Grandpa's old estate email account again. The one linked to the trust transfer. Buried beneath a stack of unread messages was one with no subject line. Sent days before his passing. Body, they're not. After the money, they're after the signature. Attached was a scanned transfer form. My name was printed at the bottom, but the signature wasn't mine. They'd forged it. They were trying to sell Wynn Carroll Holdings, the company Grandpa built from the ground up. The shares were still under my name, but I was legally dead, and that made me the perfect loophole. No questions, no resistance. Just a signature. They could fake, and a name they could pretend was gone, and the worst part, they might have gotten away with it. But they hadn't counted on Grandpa's foresight. They hadn't counted on me. I booked a ride and returned to Langford Security first thing the next morning. The receptionist remembered me. This time, I had a new key in my hands, smaller, thinner, and engraved with the number a box array, she asked, raising an eyebrow. I nodded. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. Then she gave a short nod. Right this way. Was even colder, the security even tighter. We passed biometric scanners, double-locked gates, and 2 guards who eyed me without a word. At the end of the hall, she unlocked a square metal drawer and slid it open. Inside was a black fireproof briefcase. She handed it to me, then left me. Alone, I opened the case. Inside, a manila folder with my original birth certificate, not the one with my stepfather's last name tacked on. Just my name, Serafina Lisette Wynn. Then, a stack of 12 letters written in Grandpa's unmistakable script. Each was dated around major events in my life, the day I left for college, the Christmas I spent alone, the day of my graduation. He had written them but never mailed them. Over and over he wrote the same line, "They won't erase you. Not while I'm still standing." Beneath the letters was a document heavier than the rest, a notarized will dated after the official date listed on my death certificate. This one named me the sole beneficiary of the estate. Everything, not Kalia, not Everett, not Lizette, just me. The final paper in the folder stopped my breath. A land deed, Wynn Estate. Charleston, South Carolina. Owner Serafina Lisette Wynn. The original deed, now updated, signed, filed. Everything that had been taken was now written in black and white money. They hadn't just tried to erase me, they'd failed. And they didn't even know yet. That afternoon I met with Sylvia Orton, the sharp estate attorney Grandpa had quietly hired 6 months before his passing. She wasn't warm, but she was direct. When I handed her the briefcase and the forged transfer documents, she scanned them without blinking. They wanted the company, she said, not the cash. I nodded. And they thought you were legally dead, which meant they could forge your authority and get away with it. I said nothing. We'll move fast, she added, already drafting a petition on her tablet. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was coordinated, intentional. How long before they know? I asked. Not long, she said. They'll be served within 48 hours. And just like that, the wheels were in motion. On the day of the court hearing, I wore black not out of mourning, but as armor, something that said, I'm not here to grieve. I'm here to reclaim. Kalia walked into the courthouse first, lips glossed, phone in hand like she was walking into brunch. My parents followed. My mother looked exhausted. My father's jaw was clenched tight. Their attorney, a young man with slicked back hair and too much confidence, tried to greet me. The hearing began quietly, but Sylvia didn't waste time. "We are here to contest the execution of the estate of Merrick Wynne," she said, "on the grounds of forgery, coercion, and identity suppression." The opposing lawyer laughed. "Your Honor," he said, "this is clearly an emotional outburst. My clients are the documented beneficiaries." He stopped when Sylvia tapped her screen behind the judge. A monitor flickered on. Grandpa's face filled the screen. "If they're watching this," he said calmly, "then they tried to bury her." The courtroom fell silent. I changed the will knowingly, under no pressure. I made Serafina my sole heir because she earned it. Because she endured. Callia's jaw dropped. My mother went pale. My father opened his mouth to speak, but the judge held up a hand. "Enough," Judge Kinley said. "This court recognizes Serafina Wynne as the sole legal heir to Merrick Wynne's estate. All asset transfers are hereby frozen pending further investigation." I exhaled, not from relief, but from something deeper. Release? They had tried to destroy me. Instead, they had built the very fire that proved I could survive. And now came the reckoning. The hallway outside the courtroom was strangely quiet. No yelling, no reporters. Just the echo of my boots on the polished floor and the soft hum of the building settling into itself. In my hand was the deed. Not just paper, not just property, but proof. Serafina Lisette Wynne. My name was there, printed beneath the county seal. Real, permanent. I was no longer the family ghost. At the top of the courthouse steps, I paused. The late afternoon light spread across the marble floor in soft, gold streaks. I turned around one last time, looking back at the building that had almost swallowed me whole. I raised my phone, snapped a photo of the deed in my hand, and typed a simple caption. "They tried to burn the legacy." I inherited the foundation. No hashtags, no tags, no announcements. I turned off the phone and slipped it back into my coat pocket. I didn't need a victory dance. I didn't need to show them anything. I had already 1.5 blocks away stood a modest red brick studio with tall windows and floors scuffed by years of use. It sat quietly between a flower shop and an old laundromat, almost like it had always been waiting for me. I unlocked the door. The scent of fresh paint and wood dust hit me as I stepped inside. The space was still empty, but it felt full with possibility, with peace, with purpose. I sat down on the floor, cross-legged the way I used to sit as a kid reading Grandpa's notes. Then I pulled out the envelope he had left me, marked in his unmistakable handwriting. "Start here." Inside were 3 things. A hand-sketched blueprint of the studio layout, a partially completed business license with my name on it, and a letter. For words were underlined. "Make something they can't erase." I held the paper in both hands and let the tears come soft, slow, and free. This was it. This was the start. The next few weeks blurred together in the best way. I painted the walls in warm neutrals and deep greens. I installed shelves from reclaimed wood and dragged in a heavy drafting table that had once belonged to Grandpa himself. By day, I drafted, designed, and created. By night, I planned, researched, and dreamed. The studio wasn't just a space to work, it was a declaration. A place where I could build a future without needing anyone's approval. Taped to the wall was the very first sketch I ever sent Grandpa. A lopsided logo concept for a product line I wanted to launch. He had written on the corner in red ink, "One day this will matter." He was right. The company I registered was called WM Trillium, a name Grandpa used for everything he wanted to keep away from family. Politics, old fishing licenses, rare record auctions, and private land deals. He used to joke, "Trilliums grow where they're not supposed to." And that was exactly what I had done. I wasn't supposed to thrive, but I did. One afternoon, a letter arrived, Drill mail, no digital trail. The handwriting was familiar. Kalia. She asked to meet, no lawyers, just us, the note said. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the edge of the city. Neutral ground. Kalia was already there, dressed simply but still polished. She looked tired in a way makeup couldn't fix. "I didn't know," she said as soon as I sat down. "About the death certificate. About the forged will. They just told me to sign a few forms. I didn't say anything. I thought, I thought you were gone. I didn't know they'd go that far." I watched her fidget with the edge of her napkin. Her voice shook slightly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I took a breath and finally responded. "You helped them erase me." Her eyes welled. "I didn't mean to, I know, but you still did." There was no anger in my voice. No need to raise it. The truth had weight all on its own. I was scared, she said quietly. I thought if I didn't follow along, they'd cut me off too. I nodded. They would have, but you had a choice. She looked down, then back up with terror-rimmed eyes. Do you hate me? No, I said honestly. I just don't. Need you anymore? She tried to say more, but I stood. I left money on the table and walked out without looking back. Outside, the wind carried a soft scent of rain. I pulled my coat tight and kept walking. The grand opening of W.M. Trillium came on a Friday night. The studio buzzed with soft music and quiet conversation. Friends from college, former professors, even a few strangers who had seen my work online, all gathered in the space that had once been empty but was now filled with light, texture, and soul. The exhibit was called Legacy Reclaimed. Sketches, product prototypes, and handwritten notes from Grandpa adorned the walls. One corner held a timeline showing the story of a family empire, and the girl who had been almost erased from it. People moved through the room slowly, thoughtfully. A few took pictures, some asked questions, and one woman approached me near the end, eyes soft, voice kind. This isn't revenge, she said, looking around. This feels like ... rebirth. I smiled for real this time. She was right. Later, that night, alone in the studio, I sat on the floor again with a cup of tea. Outside, the city hummed softly. The deed was framed on the wall now, not for show, but for remembrance. Beside me sat the velvet pouch Grandpa had left in the vault. Inside was the brass key and a letter I hadn't opened until today. It was short. You were never meant to follow. You were meant to lead. Trust yourself. And if they ever make you feel small again, remember this: you outgrew them. I closed the letter and placed it in my sketchbook. Then I picked up my pencil, and I began to draw. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more of these stories.